The cost of living crisis is getting worse, and it's very likely you've noticed it in your own life. But just how long is it going to go on for, and how bad are things going to get? There are lots of different reasons that things are getting more expensive. There's problems in the supply chains, hangovers from the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, the war in Ukraine. But rising bills now means that 1 in 4 people have said they've skipped meals, and 3 in 5 have opted to turn off their heating in order to save money on the bills. It's energy prices that really underpin a lot of this cost of living crisis. In April, the energy price cap rose by a record 54%. It means average household bills are now around £2,000 a year. But things are likely to get much worse when the cap is reviewed again in October. The latest estimates are that bills could rise to £2,600 a year, possibly even more. They're then expected to stay up at around £2,300 all the way through to the start of 2024. Energy prices are one factor that determine the overall rate of inflation, but rising costs of food, goods and fuel all contribute as well. Inflation has now hit a new 40-year high of 9%, and forecasts expect that will rise to over 10% by later this year. It means the steepest price rises for 4 decades, and it will be felt in all areas of life. One key concern is how wages just aren't keeping up with that rate of inflation. In fact, in the 3 months to March, wages fell in real terms by 1.2% compared to the same period last year. That figure is a 9-year low. A real worst-case scenario is if all this led to what's called a wage price spiral. It's where employers raise wages for workers to try and keep up with rising costs, while businesses put up the cost of their products to match the rising wages, each pushing the other up into an uncontrolled spiral and very high inflation. This happened in the 1970s, and it took years of deep economic pain to bring inflation back down. Another more likely worst-case scenario is a recession. That's the official term for when an economy shrinks, if a country is producing and selling fewer goods and services. If people struggling under the cost of living crisis simply can't afford to spend their money in the economy, then it will shrink. The Bank of England has forecasted contraction later this year.
Household disposable income is projected to fall by 1.75% in this 2022, which, apart from 2011, would be the largest contraction since comparable records began in 1964.
That would be seriously bad news, because a shrinking economy would likely mean pay cuts, job losses, and a whole lot more pain. The UK is far from alone with these concerns. Inflation and slow economic growth are affecting lots of countries around the world, but there are places like Japan and Canada that are faring better. Making economic predictions at a time like this is always a precarious business, but unfortunately things are likely to get worse before they get better, and much of this pain will be with us for at least a year.